Good morning, everybody. It's 7 o'clock. You are very welcome to join us for the breakfast show here on Sky News this Monday morning. For many families, though, it's been a weekend of long queues, delays and frustration at Britain's airports. Hundreds of cheery passengers waited for hours at Manchester Airport before being told by text that their holidays had been cancelled. Can you imagine? EasyJet has also cancelled 200 flights from Gatwick, and British Airways has asked passengers to check in their luggage a day early. Not just chaos at the airports as well. The RAC is warning of traffic jams as well, with nearly 20 million of us trying to get away as the bank holiday coincides with the half-term break. In a few minutes, I'm going to be asking the Technology Minister, Chris Philp, about his plans for the Jubilee weekend. It's Monday, the 30th of May. British Airways has asked passengers flying from Gatwick and Heathrow Terminal 5 to check their luggage in a day early to ease congestion.
Airport bosses here in Manchester have apologised to holidaymakers after reports some were told by the police to collect their bags and go home after waiting for hours.
Also ahead, the French sports minister is to meet with UEFA after Liverpool fans were tear-gassed at the Champions League final in Paris. In the US, President Biden mourns with the survivors of the Texas school shooting. Prime Minister under pressure as growing numbers of Conservative MPs submit letters calling for a vote of confidence in his leadership. Ukraine's Eurovision winners raised more than £700,000 for the country's army by auctioning their winning trophy. Also coming up on the programme for you this morning, wherever you're watching us around the world, we're going to be speaking with the military charity chosen to light one of almost 3,000 beacons across the UK in the run-up to the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And I'm going to be joined by the one and only DJ Fat Tony to talk about his new book, which tracks his story from a youth of petty crime to internationally renowned DJ. Good morning, everybody. Millions of Britons plan to celebrate the Jubilee holiday with a getaway to the sun or a trip to the seaside. But many passengers have endured delays and cancellations that have disrupted their plans. Some of the most chaotic scenes were in Manchester, where airport bosses have apologised to travellers, and British Airways is asking passengers at Heathrow and Gatwick to drop their bags off a day early to ease the congestion. Becky is standing by at Manchester Airport for us now. What on earth's happening, Becky? Good morning.
Hi, yeah, Kate, it's been a really hectic weekend here and at airports across the country. As you mentioned, people trying to get away for those half-term getaways. But we've seen reports of delays and really long queues. TUI passengers trying to fly with the airline TUI have been hit really hard by this. Reports that they were trying to fly out. There was a flight to Kos. Passengers were texted from the airline after waiting hours at the airport saying the flight had been cancelled, and then police, rather than airline staff, came out to tell them to collect their bags and go home. Also, reports of passengers arriving into the airport being told to go home and that their bags would be delivered to them there because there simply wasn't the capacity to turn them around at the airport in time. Now, TUI has apologised for the inconvenience and that they blamed the delays on a combination of factors. But we know that this industry has been hit really hard during the pandemic, having to scale down and then having to scale back up again for this summer. A lot of staff have gone on to work in other industries, and airports and airlines are trying to recruit, but just getting security clearance for those staff can take weeks. Now, EasyJet is another airline that's been impacted. They were already off to a bad start. They had to cancel 200 flights on Thursday due to a software failure, and they've said they'll be cancelling another 200 flights in the next 10 days, affecting passengers at Gatwick. But other airports hit too: Heathrow, Bristol, and airlines and airports are saying to passengers it might seem like a sensible thing to get there really early, but that can actually be the worst thing passengers could do in increasing those delays.
OK, Becky, thank you. Very pleased to say the Minister for Technology and Digital Economy, Chris Philp, is with us this morning. Hi, thanks for joining us on the programme. I want to start with what on earth happened in Paris over the weekend. I know that your boss, Nadine Dorries, wants UEFA to look into it.
That's right. I mean, I was horrified to see those pictures of fans, including some children, disabled fans, being pepper sprayed by French police. And from the pictures I saw, there was no obvious justification for that kind of behaviour. So Nadine, I think, is quite right to call for UEFA to urgently investigate exactly what happened there, because we don't want to see football fans, least of all children and disabled fans, being pepper sprayed by police in the way that we saw. So I really am concerned by it. The government are as well, and we need UEFA to properly investigate exactly what happened and get to the bottom of it.
We've heard from a French minister just a few moments ago, actually, talking about saying that they were sorry that children and adults, some adults had got caught up in it. But other French officials are less sympathetic. This from the French Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin. Forgive my pronunciation. He claimed that stewards were assaulted by Britons who forced entry without tickets or with counterfeit tickets. Tweeted about it as well. He said thousands of British supporters without tickets or with counterfeit tickets forced entry and sometimes assaulted the stewards. What would you say in response to that?
Well, I think this is why we need a proper investigation by UEFA to get to the bottom of it. But the pictures I saw certainly did not depict British fans, Liverpool fans, doing anything of the sort. The pictures I saw showed fans with tickets waiting to get in, being sprayed, and I was deeply concerned by that. I'm a football fan myself, Crystal Palace fan. And,
so not really then. Kidding.
Oh, ouch, ouch. We did really well this season. Look, we need to get this investigated properly.
Yeah. What about the suggestions that fans were pushing their way into the ground and they didn't have tickets? That's not the sort of behaviour that the government would condone, though.
No, it's not. Of course it isn't. But as I say, we need to get this properly looked into so we understand exactly what happened. But as I say, I saw footage of fans behaving in a perfectly calm way, getting pepper sprayed, and that just strikes me, looking at those pictures, as not appropriate. So we need an investigation to just get to the bottom of all of this. And I think UEFA are best placed to do that, and I hope they get on with it and do it urgently.
Talk to me about what's going on in the papers at the weekend, suggesting that Kerry Johnson's organised a couple of parties in the Downing Street flat now, and that is continuing to rumble on. Should it be investigated?
Well, I think we've had an unbelievably comprehensive set of investigations going on now for a period of nearly 6 months. We've had, obviously, the Sue Gray investigation published last week, and we've also actually interviewed, I mean, goodness knows, dozens or possibly even hundreds of people in the course of her investigation, looked at emails, messages and everything else. And we've had the Metropolitan Police investigation, which, again, has gone on over a number of months, and they conducted that with full police powers. So having had 2 separate investigations, including by the police, over many months, it's not immediately obvious to me that we need any more investigations when this has probably been rightly been the most thoroughly investigated set of incidents in recent times.
But the suggestion is that there are WhatsApp messages that put her in the flat on the day of the Prime Minister's birthday with other people in the apartment as well. Messages that Sue Gray has not seen. For completeness, should we not just look at that?
Yeah, so I saw this story saying that a number 10 aide had said they had further messages. But I also saw the commentary that obviously Sue Gray had approached, and the Metropolitan Police had approached everybody, I think including this aide, over the last few months, inviting them to hand over whatever evidence they have.
They didn't want to do that, though, did they? They didn't want to submit it. They wanted to show it to her, but not submit it. They were anxious about it coming back to them.
Yeah, and the thing I read in the paper, and I'm simply going on what I saw in the paper, I've got no sort of special knowledge of this, suggested that offer, that was made available, the opportunity of showing the message rather than giving a copy, but it wasn't followed up. I'm simply going on what I saw in the paper. As I say, I've got no inside knowledge of this. But my instinctive reaction is that there have been 2 incredibly thorough investigations that have gone on. And unless there's something really striking that hasn't been known about previously, then I think they have been looked into really thoroughly, and the report was incredibly thorough. And
another one to come, obviously, from MPs.
That's right.
So we'll wait for that. Talk to me about the ministerial code. It looks as though the PM's rewritten the foreword to the ministerial code, removing all reference to honesty, integrity, transparency and accountability. Why has he done that?
Well, I mean, the Nolan principles you're referring to, I think, run through all of public life. The decision to update this code, I believe, was taken, and the decision to update it in this way was taken, I think, about a year ago, in April 2021. All of the rules about the importance of being honest with Parliament and all of those things are still in there. The main change, which is something which the Committee on Standards in Public Life called for themselves, was for the ability to have a graded series of sanctions. So just like in any workplace, if somebody breaks the rules, they don't necessarily just get fired straight away. There might be other sanctions that fall short of getting fired. And I think the rewrite simply confirms that relatively common sense principle.
But why would the Prime Minister take out those references in his own forward that he only wrote, I think, in 2019, taking out bullying, harassment, honesty, integrity, transparency and accountability? Why would he do that now?
Well, so I mean, the forward gets updated periodically, but those things you talked about are, of course, in the body of the ministerial code. They haven't been completely deleted; they are still in there. And obviously, things like honesty, integrity, proper behaviour in the workplace, and so on. All of those things are still in the ministerial code.
So why take them out of the forward?
Well, because the forward is a general introduction, and I guess he just wanted to talk about whatever he wanted to talk about in that forward. They're all still in the code. Right? The forward is just an introduction, setting the scene. All of those things you've mentioned, which are obviously completely unacceptable, are still in the ministerial code in black and white.
So they're not important enough to be in the forward, though, as far as the Prime Minister
The forward's a general introduction. All of those things are in the ministerial code, and of course they're important.
Yeah, but you understand why people might be quite alarmed about that at the moment, given that the Prime Minister is accused of misleading Parliament.
Yes, I do understand, but the ministerial code still makes clear that misleading Parliament, quite rightly, is considered a breach of the ministerial code.
We've been reading in the papers this morning about some funky new plans as far as Brexit is concerned and bringing back imperial measures, pounds and ounces and the like. Is that really what people care about when they're going to be, I think, £800 poorer, despite what the government's offering them as part of this £15 billion package?
Well, look, I think it's just allowing a bit of our national heritage and culture back onto the shop shelf. But you mentioned the cost of living, and of course last week the government announced an enormous £15 billion package to help the cost of living challenges that we face. And in fact, for the poorest one-third of households, that support package announced last week will amount to £1,200. A really substantial contribution. And that's on top of everything else we've had this year: the cut in fuel duty by 5p a litre, the national living wage increased by £1,000 per year, 2 million universal credit claimants getting an extra £1,000 because the taper rate has been adjusted. So the government is throwing everything at this cost of living problem, as we rightly should.
And yet, the House of Commons Library says average earner will be £800 poorer despite those support payments.
Well, I mean, I think as the Chancellor said last week, this is a global cost of living challenge. It's not happening not just in the UK, it's happening in America, in France, Germany, across the Western world, caused by a whole number of things. The bounce back from COVID, supply chain problems in China where they're still having lockdowns, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, a whole number of issues are feeding this across the Western world. And what we're doing in the UK is everything possible to try and ameliorate and soften the blow that these cost of living challenges are posing. What we unveiled last week was far more than the Labour Party had proposed. The package this year so far amounts to £37 billion. Hundreds and hundreds
but people
of
are still
pounds
going to be worse off than
for each
800
household.
quid.
And for the poorer households, it's well over £1,000.
Yeah. OK, it's time to celebrate, isn't it, this weekend? And we're all going to Jubilee parties. I think you're going to one.
A garden party in Kenley, which is in my Croydon constituency.
Apparently, if you've not appealed for a licence to the council, then it's too late. And you can't have a street party. Johnny Mercer, one of your colleagues, has tweeted saying these street parties should be allowed to go ahead. We should not let killjoys spoil the Jubilee. What do you think?
Look, well, I would just I could fully sympathise with the problems you just described. I think it's fantastic we're celebrating the Queen's Jubilee. And I would just say to local councils, around the country, including my own in Croydon, if you do get a late application and maybe the deadline has technically passed, I would just say to councils, just show a little bit of flexibility, show a little bit of willingness to accommodate people. And if you're at all able to, please do grant these requests, even if they are made technically after the deadline. Let's just show a bit of flexibility and pragmatism in support of Her Majesty's 70th Jubilee.
There we go. Lend on and up. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's great to see you. Thanks a lot. Don't forget, of course, we will be covering the Jubilee extensively here on Sky News. I'm going to the Palace on Thursday. I'm going to St Paul's, indeed. St Paul's on Friday, and then back to the pageant in the Mall on Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Do join us. Let's have a look what the papers are doing this morning. The Metro has an image of crying Liverpool fans as the Culture Secretary calls for a probe into the policing of Champions League final in Paris. The Mirror hears from a father who claims riot police tear-gassed his 9-year-old son. The FT says central banks are raising interest rates in the most widespread tightening of monetary policy for more than 20 years. The Eye reports that Boris Johnson is set to remove dozens of EU laws this year in a bid to appease members of his party and turn around low support numbers. Telegraph has details about a new post-Brexit scheme allowing students leaving universities such as Harvard and Yale to get UK visas. The Times reports ministers fear 6 million households could face blackouts this winter if Russia goes further in cutting off gas supplies to the EU. The Express leads on calls for patients who miss GP appointments to be fined, claiming it is costing the NHS more than £1.4 million a day. The Mail says 12 million people will celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee with street parties next weekend. And you heard there from the Minister appealing to councils not to be killjoys, and if they receive late applications, wave them on through. Well, with the Jubilee just around the corner, of course, celebrations now just days away, discussing what we can expect from the bank holiday weekend with the royal biographer, Angela Levin. Also get more reaction to the chaos that marred Saturday's Champions League final with a Labour MP who was caught up in the trouble in Paris. And in the next hour of the programme, joined by the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary and MP for Wigan, that's Lisa Nandy. France's Minister for Sport will hold a meeting this morning to discuss the events that led to the chaotic scenes in Paris ahead of Saturday night's Champions League final in Paris. She says she regrets that children were impacted by the use of tear gas. The Technology Minister, Chris Philp, told this programme there should be a full investigation. Inzamam Rashid reports.
It may not have been their night, but for Liverpool, it has been one hell of a season. On Sunday, the city was a sea of red as tens of thousands lined the streets to welcome their team home from Paris. Hours before kick-off, the scene outside the Stade de France. Chaos and struggle as tempers flared. UEFA said thousands tried to enter with fake tickets and many turned up late, but caught in the middle were Liverpool fans holding official tickets, stranded with no way inside. For many caught up in the clashes, the result was almost secondary, and as they returned to Liverpool, a huge sigh of relief.
It's a bit of a recipe for disaster, really. It's just poor planning and organisation, I thought.
We'd done everything we were supposed to do, and we were at the right gate at the right time. We'd followed the procedure, and we were tear-gassed.
I think the fans are totally exonerated if you read all the press reports, and I think the French authorities should be a wee bit embarrassed by the way that they behaved. If it's normal, then fine, but our fans never behaved anything other than supportive of the football club.
Despite all the heartbreak, Liverpool have earned this victory parade. Those players and these fans still have something to celebrate. But there's no doubt what happened in Paris before and after the match is a major distraction.
We're intent on ensuring that there's an independent investigation, and obviously we as the club will be absolutely a part of that and cooperative, and we look forward to making sure that that's done and done well.
This is a side that were once on target to make footballing history, but 4 trophies were whittled down to just 2. That may not have dampened the celebrations, but the pandemonium in Paris certainly did. Inzamam Rashid, Sky News, Liverpool.
Well, there was violence in the French city of Saint-Étienne last night. Angry fans entered the pitch after Saint-Étienne lost their playoff match, relegating them for the first time in 18 years. Fireworks were launched as players were evacuated from the pitch. Police say 2 officers and 17 supporters were injured. What do we think of what the Minister had to say? Good morning.
Morning, Kay. Well, he said there's no justification for the scenes that we saw in Paris over the weekend, which is a bit further than his boss, Nadine Dorries, has gone. But he said that she has called for an investigation, for UEFA to investigate what happened as a matter of urgency, because clearly we saw young children, pregnant women, old people caught up in this tear gassing, allegations of people being hit with batons. And the firm message from the government is that a lot of this is clearly unacceptable. Some interesting mixed messages from the French government. The Interior Minister, as he put it to Chris Philp, has suggested that it was the Liverpool fans with fake tickets who were to blame, but others in the French government making clear that something clearly went wrong and needs to be looked into. So I think it wasn't an aggressive comment that he made towards the French government, but he said that we clearly need to get to the bottom of it.
And as far as Jubilee parties are concerned, let them eat cake.
Yes, so lots of Jubilee parties going on across the country over the next few days, but not enough, according to the Culture Minister. There's been reports that local councils say it is now too late to have a Jubilee party.
Boo!
But Chris Philp says they should let people go ahead, although these things do take a while to organise, so I'm not sure how many could be done at this late stage, but he says that councils should reconsider people's requests.
I think the problem is that people have organised a party but forgot that they need to get a licence.
You do need a licence from the council,
Yeah.
and some roads don't let you have them, I believe.
Yeah, but if you apply now, the government is saying via the Minister this morning that the council really should perhaps wave it through. What did you think about what he was saying about the ministerial code being changed?
So I think we're looking at where we are, taking stock of where Partygate has got to, with about 34 MPs having expressed public reservations about Boris Johnson, an unknown number of those potentially having submitted letters calling for a no confidence vote. I think what will probably add to their concerns is the fact that a new edition of the ministerial code, which is the standards that ministers and of course the Prime Minister need to live up to, has been rewritten by Boris Johnson with the forward taking out words like integrity, honesty, transparency, no bullying and harassment. And while Chris Philp was saying that, oh, this doesn't really matter, he seemed a little bit awkward there in trying to defend why this has happened. And I think for many MPs, this is just the timing of this in the middle of Partygate will not particularly fill them with confidence. MPs are in their constituencies at the moment. Parliament is in half-term, it's in recess, and they will be taking soundings as to how the public feel about Boris Johnson and whether he's now become an electoral liability. And I think while we're not in the numbers of MPs where it looks like a serious threat yet, whether we get there or not will be depending on how things go over the next few weeks.
A couple of by-elections to come.
Indeed.
And then, of course, that report from MPs into Partygate for now. Tomorrow's Take at 9 o'clock. Look forward to it. Thanks very much indeed. Right now, though, let's take you to Ukraine, where President Zelensky has sacked the head of his security service in Kharkiv, accusing him of selfishly caring only about his own interests rather than working to defend the city. He announced the decision after making a visit to troops on the front line. Alistair standing by for us in Kiev. Hi, Ali. Update us.
Yeah, morning. President Zelensky made that trip to Kharkiv yesterday. Surprisingly, it's the first he's travelled outside of Kiev by some way since the conflict started just over 3 months ago on the 24th of February. Kharkiv from Kiev's about a 4 or 5 hour drive. So I think he was sending a message domestically of support for the troops on the front line. And there's been some quite fierce fighting around Kharkiv, but also clearly sending a message to the Kremlin that he is able to, with some degree of freedom, travel around large swathes of his country because, of course, let us not forget, no doubt the Russians would have wanted to, at the very least, have removed President Zelensky from power, perhaps even assassinated him as a part of their invasion, but they failed to do that. And I think Zelensky is showing a ruthless side as well when he doesn't feel that the parts of the machinery of military and security are operating well enough. He is happy to get rid of them and sack them, as he did yesterday. Elsewhere in the east, very fierce fighting still around the Luhansk region, particularly the town of Severodonetsk. It's almost street by street at the moment. One assumes that the Russians will take it, and it's only a matter of time. But the Ukrainians are putting up a sterner defence than I think we probably expected them to. However, if the Russians do capture it, that will mean that they've pretty much taken the eastern Donbass region, and it'll be a victory of sorts for Vladimir Putin, but nothing like what he would have expected. And we'll see what they do next, whether they turn their sights then to Mykolaiv and perhaps on towards Odessa.
OK, thanks very much, Ali. Thank you. Looking at some of today's other headlines for you now. And graduates from the top 50 universities outside Britain can apply for a new visa scheme to come to the UK from today. The route is open to those holding a degree equivalent to a UK bachelor's or postgraduate degree, awarded no more than 5 years before the application date. The visa will allow eligible individuals and their dependents to move to the UK without a prior job offer and will cost £715. A table will be set for the victims of the Grenfell fire during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. 72 place cards, plates, cups, flags and bunting will be laid out to remember the people killed in the Tower Block fire. The sale of Chelsea Football Club is expected to be completed today after a final and definitive agreement was reached with the consortium fronted by US businessman Todd Burley. The Premier League and UK government have approved the £4.25 billion takeover. US President Joe Biden has said he is committed to turning pain into action. He made the pledge after meeting with the families of 19 students and 2 teachers who were shot dead in the Texas school shooting. From Uvalde, here's Greg Milam.
On a day of mourning in Uvalde, the visit that every city must dread, the motorcade of a president carrying a nation's condolences for unimaginable loss. Joe and Jill Biden went straight to the memorial at the Robb Elementary School, the scene of such horror on Tuesday. President and First Lady, herself a teacher of course, paying their respects. This has become a sad ritual for American presidents, so many victims of gun violence in so many communities. But for the people of Uvalde, at the end of such a traumatic week, thoughts were with their neighbours who lost so much.
We go home to our kids, and unfortunately they can't. And this is something that Uvalde will always be remembered because of this tragedy. And it's one thing that, you know, you don't want to be remembered this way. You always want to be remembered as something positive.
The questions about the speed of the police response on Tuesday have now prompted the Department of Justice to open what they call a critical incident review to see if lessons can be learned. Just one of the reckonings America is facing. While this visit was about consoling and supporting the community, Joe Biden knows there are big questions for politicians, including him, about whether anything can be done to change a culture that allows these things to happen. This was the chant that confronted the president here, a plea for him to do something. We will, he replied, but is that a promise he can keep? Greg Milam, Sky News, Uvalde in Texas.
Quick look at what's happening ahead of the Jubilee weekend, the weather I'm talking about, of course.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Cool, unsettled conditions over the next few days should clear up. Yay, to leave more benign weather for the Jubilee weekend. It's a chilly start to the day with a touch of frost in some rural parts.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Not really sure what benign weather looks like, but I'm going to take it as a plus. Now, Ukraine's Eurovision winners have raised more than £700,000 for the Ukrainian army by auctioning their trophy. Kalush Orchestra won the song contest earlier this month with their entry Stefania. They'd been on the streets fighting off Russian aggressors just weeks before taking to the stage in Turin. The contest trophy makers have promised to make them a replacement for free. That's cool, isn't it? Speaking of cool, have a look at these cool pics. One of Britain's most iconic landmarks featuring Britain's most iconic person. Images of Queen Elizabeth throughout her years on the throne have been projected onto Stonehenge to mark her Platinum Jubilee. It starts with her coronation and features pictures of her riding a horse and walking her beloved corgis. Do you know the name of the first ever corgi that she had? Susan. Susan, just one of many tributes that we'll see throughout this week as the country comes together to mark Her Majesty's 70 years on the throne. That probably is Susan right there. Still to come after the break, we'll get more reaction to events that marred Saturday's Champions League final with a Liverpool MP who was caught up in the chaos. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. The French sports minister says she regrets that children were impacted by the use of tear gas during the chaotic scenes before Saturday's Champions League final in Paris. Government Minister Chris Philp told this programme there should be a full investigation. British Airways has asked passengers flying from Gatwick and Heathrow Terminal 5 to check their luggage in a day early to ease congestion. And President Joe Biden has said he is committed to turning pain into action as he met the families of 19 students and 2 teachers who were shot dead in the Texas school shooting. In the last half an hour, the government minister has told me he saw no justification for scenes that saw Liverpool fans tear-gassed by French police ahead of Saturday's Champions League final. He also said European football's governing body, UEFA, should lead a full investigation.
I was horrified to see those pictures of fans, including some children, disabled fans, being pepper sprayed by French police. And from the pictures I saw, there was no obvious justification for that kind of behaviour. So Nadine, I think, is quite right to call for UEFA to urgently investigate exactly what happened there, because we don't want to see football fans, least of all children and disabled fans, being pepper sprayed by police in the way that we saw. So I really am concerned by it. The government are as well, and we need UEFA to properly investigate exactly what happened and get to the bottom of it.
Well, I also asked the minister about reports that local councils may reject applications to hold Jubilee street parties after deadlines have passed. Mr Philp urged local authorities to be lenient on those looking to celebrate over the bank holiday weekend.
Well, I would just, look, I could fully sympathise with the problems you just described. I think it's fantastic we're celebrating the Queen's Jubilee. And I would just say to local councils, you know, around the country, including my own in Croydon, if you do get a late application and maybe the deadline has technically passed, I would just say to councils, just show a little bit of flexibility, show a little bit of willingness to accommodate people. And if you're at all able to, you know, please do grant these requests, even if they are made technically after the deadline. Let's just show a bit of flexibility and pragmatism in support of Her Majesty's 70th Jubilee.
Angela's here to talk to us about the celebrations. Heard there from the minister saying that the councils should be more lenient with these licences. Everybody wants to celebrate, millions and millions of us.
Yes, I think the numbers have gone up at the last minute, as they usually do.
Yeah.
People think, oh, well, we'll see and all that. But actually, the feeling that we've had such a miserable time that we want to celebrate, and this is a lovely reason to celebrate. Meet your neighbours they might have moved in 2 years ago and you've never seen them. And I think it's really mean for the councils to say they're going to be fine. Why should they? And they said, well, you can't close the road. Well, you can close the road just for a few minutes, for an hour or so, and have a nice time. I think it's really stingy.
Yeah, well, the government agrees, so let's see what happens as a result of that. The Queen is not going to the races, apparently.
Yes, I thought that would be the one that she would really like to go to, that and St Paul's for the ceremony.
On Friday.
But on Friday, yes. But I think maybe Thursday and Friday itself is going to be too much. Thursday is very busy indeed. And I think she just wanted to take a break, but also her 3 horses that were supposed to be in the Derby aren't there. So I think that she's a bit miffed about that.
It's a shame because the jockeys were all going to create a guard of honour for her, weren't they?
Yes, 40 jockeys that have been working with her over many, many decades were going to dress up in the colours that they should be, the Queen's colours, which is mauve, red and gold. And they'll stand there as she came up. And the car was going to bring her right to the royal spot, so she almost didn't have to walk at all. Yeah. So that is a shame. But rumour has it that as an alternative...
There's a birthday party, isn't there?
She'll meet Lilibet, who will be one, or is one already, but is going to have a party, or at least she's going to meet her great-grandmother. She's just one, so I think it will be quite baffling at who this particular woman is for her. But that's a possible alternative. But Harry and Meghan are keeping it unsure when they're coming, what they're coming to, and how it's all going to work for them. So
will we see them on the balcony?
Know.
We're talking about, obviously, the Sussexes. Will we see them on the balcony?
No. The Queen's been firm about that. And the way she's done it is to say, if you're not a working royal, you can't be on it. And that's a way of actually stopping Prince Andrew from going up, because I would think there will be quite a feeling of anger amongst us all that he's doing that. So rather than do the one is in and one is out, actually neither of them can come. But again, I think, Prince Harry might persuade her to let to the last minute, because instead of going to Derby, she's thinking, or we're being offered, that she could come on the balcony twice. You see, so maybe one is actually when it's the Trooping the Colour that won't come on there, but another one maybe they will. I just hope they don't take it over and everybody's busy writing and talking about them and not about Hamas.
No, absolutely not.
I hope that
absolutely
it's her
not.
day, her occasion. It's absolutely unique in our history.
It's never going to happen again, is it? 70 years on the throne.
No.
Ever, anywhere.
No. And I hope that we just focus on her and make sure that she has the most wonderful time, as well as us. We follow it, but she's going to have the
Yeah, I've been prepping for the pageant on the Sunday with so many people taking part in it along the Mall. I'm not sure how much I can tell you about it, but it's going to be spectacular.
Well, it sounds spectacular, actually, that they've got everybody. They've got every type of music you can imagine. Jazz, classical, pop, you name it, they've got it. They've got so many celebrities coming, singing and dancing, and it will be absolutely superb.
Where are you going to be?
I don't know yet. I'll be somewhere, but I don't know exactly where yet.
OK.
I know I'm going to be in Buckingham Palace on Thursday, but that's it. But I find it very exciting and so happy that it's a really positive occasion, which we really need. And we can all sing and wave flags and be a bit sort of jolly.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's great to see you, Angela. Thank you so much for
you.
joining us on the programme this morning. So, where are you going to be for the Jubilee celebrations? Why not celebrate with us?
The Queen is about to celebrate her Platinum Jubilee, something that no other monarch has done.
That's 70 years of duty, dedication and service. Sky News will bring you the celebrations and pageantry to mark this historic occasion.
Plus, a very special guest.
I'll be joining the Sky News team as we celebrate the very best of Britain, and we cannot wait. That's the Platinum Jubilee on Sky News.
Right, let's get more now on the chaotic scenes that marred Saturday's Champions League final between Liverpool and Real Madrid. The Technology Minister, Chris Philp, told this programme that the use of pepper spray against fans behaving calmly was unjustifiable and UEFA should investigate what happened. Labour MP for Liverpool West Derby, that's Ian Byrne, was caught up in the chaos outside the Stade de France, and he's with us now. Hi, thanks for joining us on the programme. Talk us through what it was like.
Hey, good morning, Kay. It was horrific. There's no other words to describe it. It was absolutely horrific. And as someone that was at Hillsborough in 1989, it brought so many terrible memories flooding back. I'm sure many people who were there experienced that same flashback. It was just awful. Police and stewarding, extremely hostile atmosphere from the get-go. And I think we've got to remember this is the premier football occasion in Europe, and to treat football fans like animals, which they did, is unforgivable.
What caused it?
Awful policing, awful stewarding, mismanagement around the grounds, gates shut. I mean, I think we were there an hour before, and we seen where I was entering in turnstile in Section A. I think there was 13 turnstiles and 2 were actually open. So you can imagine what was happening with people trying to funnel in. It was just awful. People getting crushed, kids. It was a really awful experience, Kay. And when I got through, I after an hour, we eventually got through the other side, and I was literally begging the security guards to open up the other remaining turnstiles. To no avail. I was actually with Liverpool Football Club stewards on the other side, and they were just powerless. They weren't getting taken any notice of. So it was absolutely chaotic.
Why do you think French authorities are blaming Liverpool fans?
Because that's what they do. It's the easy thing to do, isn't it? We're back in 1989 territory, aren't we, where the lies and smears about Hillsborough went out really quickly, and that narrative was set. So, you know, when I got into the grounds, I was absolutely appalled when we seen the sign saying due to late arrival of fans. There was people there who'd been there 3.5 hours. They were kettled in, getting pepper sprayed, tear gassed. You know, this is a football occasion. You know, we've all seen the footage, we've seen the photos, you know, and I just thank God this time that the journalists were there. You know, Sky Sports News have been fantastic. The British journalists have covered it wonderfully well. So the real truth about what happened is out there now. So obviously they've had to roll back, but UEFA and the French authorities need to hang their heads in shame about what happened Saturday night.
What do you say to the suggestions that fans arrived without tickets and stormed into the ground?
Well, I can speak from my personal experience. So my eyewitness account was there was lots and lots of locals who were hanging around the ground. Obviously, the stories about mugging and people getting tickets stolen. But I seen lots and lots of locals storming over the walls, storming over the gates. Where I was standing in the game, and we eventually got in about 20 minutes into the game. There was lots of local fans who didn't wear colours. They just come in to do whatever they wanted to do within the stadium. So that's my personal experience, Kate. That's what I've seen, and I'll say as it is.
I know that you've written to the Foreign Secretary, or are about to ask her for an investigation. We were speaking to the government minister this morning. The government already calling for that investigation. What do you want it to cover?
Well, I think we've got to make sure that the scenes what we experienced on Saturday are never ever replicated again at any sporting occasion, you know. And the Stade de France holds many different sporting finals. I think it's got the Rugby World Cup, I think the Olympics. And we need to make sure that lessons are learned from what happened. You know, this wasn't a Liverpool football thing. This was a football thing. Manchester City could have been in that position quite easily. Chelsea, any other football club that was in the Champions League would have had exactly the same experiences. So I think from my perspective, you know, the football authorities in this country, the governments need to come together and say enough is enough. We just will not accept that. Moving forward, and UEFA have got to learn lessons about the absolute debacle of what we see in Saturday, but also everything around the final, the ticket allocation. There's lots and lots to learn, so we need a full independent investigation. And to be honest, I think we need an apology from the French authorities, because some of the tweets that came out from politicians who were there were lies. No, there's no other way to describe it. You know, what the narrative had tried to be set by French politicians, and they need to apologise to Liverpool Football Club, the supporter base as well.
The UEFA's weighed in as well, though, haven't they? Claiming that the problems outside the venue were caused by thousands of fans who'd purchased fake tickets, which did not work in the turnstiles. And they did say they were sympathetic to those affected, and with further review these matters urgently. But again, blaming the fans.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's an easy thing to do, Kay, isn't it? You know, for mistakes that were made by the authorities and UEFA, the easiest thing in the world is to blame football fans, blame Liverpool fans, and we won't get to the root of what we need to get to, which is the truth about what happened. And as I said, I never ever want any football fan or any sporting fan to ever go through what we experienced on Saturday night, you know. And there'll be many sales people will be, I'm sure, putting out their experiences and writing to the football clubs, writing to the local MPs. So I think that all needs to be collated. But for me, it's about ensuring that no one has to go through that again. You know, I never thought I'd see that again after experiencing Hillsborough. But, you know, I think but for the patience, the behaviour of the Liverpool football fans, they averted the catastrophe, which was right at the door of the French authorities and UEFA. Let's make no mistake about that.
OK. Well, I'm glad you're home safe. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Looking at some of the other headlines for you this morning, Nepal's army says it's located the crash site of a plane that went missing on Sunday with 22 people on board. The Tara airplane was on a scheduled flight from Pokhara to Jomsom. At least 57 people have been killed and thousands displaced as heavy rain led to landslides in the northeast of Brazil. It's the fourth major flood in the country in 5 months. Experts say monkeypox represents a moderate risk to overall public health at a global level. The World Health Organization has said that the sudden appearance of the disease in countries where it's not usually found suggests undetected transmission for some time. More cases are expected as testing expands. Let's return to the war in Ukraine now, and EU leaders are meeting this morning to discuss the next phase of Europe's diplomatic response. And in Ukraine's pulverised east, President Volodymyr Zelensky has said the entire critical infrastructure of the besieged city of Severodonetsk has been destroyed by Russian artillery. Chair of the House of Commons Defence Select Committee, that's Tobias Ellwood, is joining us now. Hello to Mr Ellwood. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. What's your latest assessment of what's happening in Ukraine?
Exactly as you say, the fighting is now around Severodonetsk. If this falls, then Russian forces will continue pressing west. They'll consolidate in that area. My concern then is that they will then move around to the port of Odessa, and they'll do to Odessa what they did to Mariupol, which you've been reporting on in the past. If that happens, Ukraine is then landlocked, but more critically, that grain will not be able to get out of the country. And we're now coming to realize that Ukraine is the breadbasket for Europe and beyond. We face a cost of living crisis here that's in part fueled by the war in Ukraine. We need to help Ukrainians more. At the moment, we see the attention span fading to some degree, and I make it very, very clear now. The way I see it from my position is that Russia is actually winning in its objectives. Ukraine is outnumbered and outgunned, and we need to support our Ukrainian friends more than we're doing at the moment.
In what way?
It's longer-range missile systems. What's happening is that the brave Ukrainian forces are trying to hold ground or even push forward, and they can't contend with the Russian missile systems, which are attacking them from 70 kilometers away. So we need to upgrade the type of equipment that we're providing to Ukraine. But also there's a wider question of what actually we're trying to achieve. What is the ultimate objective? I believe it should be to flush out Russian forces in its entirety from Ukraine mainland. We need to clarify that mission, because that itself then dictates the type of weapon systems we need to support. There also needs to be a coalition of the willing. NATO formally is still sitting on its hands. This most formidable alliance is just watching what's going on. There needs to be coordination of what we're doing in Ukraine, recognizing that if we don't put out the fire there, this fire will spread to other parts of Europe. That's what Putin's intention is.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the latest situation as far as your Prime Minister is concerned. What next for him now? Where's he going from here? He looks as though he has more lives than a cat.
It does seem that way, but I say that the party is increasingly in a difficult place. This is going to be a testing summer. Polling is now showing we could lose 90 seats. And we know that we still seem to be in denial, and it's time to shake off this partisan Stockholm syndrome, I believe. Our party brand is suffering. We will lose the next election on current trajectory, as reflected in recent elections, by local elections, and no doubt in the tough by-elections ahead. And when you get the church elders in the party, such as Lord Hague, now expressing huge concern, we need to listen. And as I predicted, we're now going to get a steady drumbeat of colleagues no longer willing to defend or indeed dismiss what happened in Number 10. The party does seem to be a little adrift at the moment as to what we stand for, our big vision, what our answers are to provide the solutions, the innovative solutions to the challenges ahead.
What are you being told in private in the tea rooms, Mr Ellwood? Do you have more public support, in your view, of the Prime Minister than seems to be when we saw you being heckled by your own colleagues the other day in the chamber?
Well, it was one individual colleague who heckled me, but absolutely. What was really interesting after that is the amount of support privately that people are saying they will go back and they will make judgments, they will speak to their associations, they will see the outcome of the local elections. But there's not only just a concern on the conduct of behaviour in Number 10, because that's breached the trust with the British people. It's now concerns about number 10 thinking, what our policies are. What we are now seeing is an approach to shore up and chase a slice of the electorate with policies such as bringing back imperial measurements. There will be some people in our party which will like this nostalgic policy in the hope that it's enough to win the next election. But this is not the case. This is not one nation conservative thinking that's required to appeal beyond our base. It's far from the inspirational, visionary, progressive thinking that we require. And it fits into a pattern, I'm afraid, of micro announcements that are increasingly thrown out there, which actually is sowing further discontent with more MPs.
Now, I know that he doesn't speak particularly fondly of you at the moment in Downing Street, but somebody who speaks very fondly of the Prime Minister is the Ukrainian president, you know, and he's the hero of the world at the moment. Some people would see him as that. So that sort of ringing endorsement means that the Prime Minister has support from all quarters.
Yes, but don't assume that just because Boris Johnson may or may not be replaced, that our foreign policy will change in Ukraine. We've been providing weapon systems and support since 2014. And as I've just been illustrating, there is a vacuum of leadership in Europe at the moment. That's where I'd like to see Britain step forward in consolidating a coalition if NATO isn't going to do it. That's what I'd like to see Britain do. So let's not use Ukraine as a fig leaf to deny the fact that we have a serious issue in our party that needs to be addressed. There's now imminent talk of a reshuffle to remove any further questioning voices, you know, that might criticize what the Prime Minister does in private. This is exactly the wrong way we should be going. It's the absence of those inquisitive minds being heard that actually allowed legislation to support Owen Paterson, for example, to go unscrutinized.
Yeah, I'm guessing you wouldn't be waiting for the call if there was a reshuffle.
No, I wouldn't. I'm not sure that I would answer that. We need big changes to take place in our party. We've been in 12 years. There's no doubt about it. That's tough for any party in government. But we need to show the nation that we're willing to refresh. We're energized, and there's a desire, a passion to have the policies that will actually earn the trust to win us the next general election.
OK, it's great to talk to you as always. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's go to Windsor, should we, ahead of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, which kick off in earnest later on this week. Shingy is there for us. We believe that Her Majesty is going to be hopefully getting together with her latest great-grandchild there later on in the week.
That's right. She'll get her own private moment of celebration before the very public Jubilee celebrations. We understand that Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle will be staying here at Windsor in Frogmore Cottage, and they'll get the chance to go to the Thanksgiving service at St Paul's on the weekend. But they're also on the weekend, fittingly on Lilibet's first birthday, she may get the chance to spend some time with the Queen, obviously her namesake. And that'll be quite a big moment alongside Jubilee celebrations across the country with 16,000 street parties planned.
Well, thanks very much. We'll come back to you in the next hour. Also talking about what the government's saying about council meanies.